we're going to look at now our read quality and manipulating reads. I used to just take whatever I was given, submit it for assembly and annotation, but I'm becoming a more sophisticated user and trying to remove contamination and massaging my reads before I do anything to them. We're working on this new paper for BV-BRC, and it's going to be pretty much the same workshop in a paper format. And I started with taxonomic classification, just what you're seeing here, because as a biologist, that's the way I move forward. The editor is a computer scientist, and he said, oh no, everybody does read quality first. And whatever, I'll have words with him. I don't mind changing it, although the paper's already formatted in this numerical form, so it'll be a pain for me. But it depends on which branch of the biological analysis family you're coming from. If you're more bioinformatically inclined, you'll look at read quality. From my perspective, if you're a biologist, you want to be sure everything was sequenced right before you try anything else. So that's the way I do it. So we have FASTQ Utilities. If you click here, it'll take you to the tutorial. And the tutorial, what's important about the tutorial is, let me scroll down, it shows you how to do everything. But at the bottom, it has the references. And so what we'd like you to do when you use the service, we don't ask anything of you. You get an occasional email from us saying, hey, we're having a workshop. That's about it. But what we do need is for you to reference us when you cite your papers. That's the only way that NIAID and NIH will continue to fund this free resource for your benefit, is if you cite us. But you can't just say, I ran the taxonomic classification service in BV-BRC and cite us. Put it this way, assembled my genome in BV-BRC. Any reviewer that's worth his grain of salt, that's not going to be good enough for them. They want to know which pipeline you use, things like that. So down here, I give you all the references that you need. And I tried to do it in such a way, often at the very top, this one needs to be updated because we're always in the process of adding more services. In the top, I try to give you a good thing that you can just cut and paste and put in your materials and methods. And I don't think it's plagiarism if it's in materials and methods. And if you're worried about it, just change the words a bit. Also, if you see this arrow and click on that, it leads you to the videos that we have of the service. So we have these short videos showing you how to do everything. And so you can do that. So we have the tutorials, and often we have the videos. We don't have videos for everything, but we're working on that. So all of that is there for you. Okay. So FASTQ Utilities is a way to massage your data for downstream analyses. The first step on this one is to do the output folder. And then we have to establish the name. Well, it depends on what you want to do. And so let's look at pipeline here. And we can trim the reads. We can do paired filter. And this is something that's really rare, but we've run into a few users that have it, that generally when you have paired reads, they're separated into forward strand and reverse strand. Some sequencing facilities put them in the same file. And so it looks like a single read file, but it's not. It's a paired read file that is put together. And you won't know that until the job fails on you, because you would submit it as a single read file. And then if it failed on you, what should you do? Contact us through the green action bar. Okay. Sounds like something out of the Marvel universe, the action bar. So you report the job to us, and then we'd look at it and say, oh, you need to run this on it. Okay, so we have that. We have FastQC and Align. Let's start with FastQC. That is the alignment, that will show you the quality of the reads. You can put all of them in too, and get all the jobs at once if you want. But let's first look at FASTQ, and we want that ERR number. So I would know it's in taxonomic classification, text file, view. So it's this ERR 7916262. The reason I put these in as a text document is so that you can grab in and easily cut and paste it from here. Put that in and move it over. Oh, and now I have to name it. So I'll call it ERR FASTQ. And then once I've filled out everything, the button should turn blue. And then I can submit it. Well, while we're here, rather than jumping over and looking at the job, if I decide I didn't want to do that, you can click that off. And I really wanted to trim it. Trimming uses Trim Galore. And one of the things we get asked all the time is, can I set how much to trim off either end? Right now, you can't do that. What Trim Galore is looking for are specific adapters, the most popular adapters that are used by sequencing facilities, and chops those off. But we've had many requests because we'll show you some read files that have problems. Can I just trim off the last 20 base pairs of that? We don't have that yet, but it's in our request thing. So I want to trim this one, and then I can put the same thing in there and put trim. And see, I didn't have to do too much there. So I submit that one. And now we're going to do something a little bit different. Remember when we ran this on taxonomic classification, there was Haemophilus influenzae. What was one of the other two predominant organisms that we could see in there? So it was the human genome. So one of the things you can do, if you know there's a contaminant there, you can get rid of those reads. So we're going to map these reads to the human genome. So let's click Align here and add that in. And then look what happens. We get a warning thing here. I have to select a target genome to map this to. So let me go over here to one of these workspaces, and I want to go into BV-BRC workspace, AMR, FASTQ Utilities, Align, and then I have the text document there. So I want to view that. And there's the Homo sapiens. And I'm just going to show you this. I encourage you to do it too, but the number is 9606.33. That's an ID that everyone in this room shares. You didn't know that, but we could all be called 9606. And the reason I'm giving you this number is generally, like if I wanted to do Buchnera or something like that, on a good day, it would give me a list, of genomes that I could map it to. And I could go in here and click on this target thing, and I could say, I only want the reference or representative genomes, which are an NCBI identifier for these genomes that they consider to be good quality. And then it would show me what was available there. Or I could do my private data or whatever. But if I put in human here, and it doesn't matter what it is, so many of the viral genomes, because you can use this for viruses too, have human in the name, it's going to go on. You'll never get there. For at least for human, it's just easier to put in the taxon ID, and then you get it. And so I put in here, aligned human. And then I submit that job. Are you all with me? I don't see you guys submitting your own jobs. And to do the next steps, this is the most important one. So I need you to get your little fingers going, or you're going to be very sad when we go to the next steps, because you won't have the reads you need. So we submit that. So now we've got 3 jobs running. And I could have done this whole thing. I could have said, well, first I want to align, and then I want to trim, and then I want to see the quality. So you could do it all that way, which is the way I think most people would do it. But I'm more of a purist. I don't like to mix things. I like to do things one at a time. And so that's why I do it this way. And it's also easier to demo when I do that. Okay, we've submitted our jobs. So let's go into our workspace and into our joint workspace that we're all in together, AMR workshop, FASTQ Utilities. And let's first look at the quality scores. So we click on that. So I have the README so that you can go in and look at it and see how to submit the job, which we just did. But what does this checkered flag mean?
Sure.
So let's click on the job. So when I have a FASTQ utility job, I see 2 different reports there. What do you think that means? It's a paired in read. I didn't know that from just, you guys wouldn't have done that from just entering the file, but this was a paired read file. And so we're getting a quality report on each of the reads. And we also have the meta text there. So if you viewed that, boring. But another thing, it gives you links to the genome browser, but also we don't care about that at this point. So let's just look at one of these. So I click on that, and the green action bar, that should be a new Marvel superhero instead of Green Lantern. Oh, is that the DC universe? I may have mixed things up. Whoops. Okay, then I click view. And so it's going to tell me some stuff about this, that these are Illumina reads. This is this. These reads look really good because at the very end here, there's some, going into low quality. Green are the best quality. These are sort of medium quality, and these are poor quality. So these reads look pretty good. And generally, this is where I stop. I look at this and that makes me happy. But if you're interested in other stuff, you can go down, you can see all of these different reports that are part of a FASTQC report that show you. And actually, this one will tell you if it has adapters that you need to be worried about. One thing, when I first started running FASTQC, I didn't know what bad reads looked like. So I didn't have a thing to compare it to. I couldn't tell what looked good and what looked bad. So I included a bad read to show you. Okay, and look at that. No green, all orange and red. Ick. If you have this, you go back to the drawing board. Green, good, others, bad. Okay. So that's what it looks like on the FASTQC, which is the quality. Now let's look at a trim job. I actually find the trimming jobs kind of boring, but here we go. So we get a report on each of the reads. And actually at this point, it's generating some reads. So it's giving you trimmed reads. So if you were getting stuff, removing a bunch of stuff, if you could see that a bunch of stuff that you didn't like it, you would use these reads in your later analyses. So that's all got whatever's bad trimmed away. So let's look at the report, which is a boring report in terms of there are no pretty pictures, but it's just telling you it found this adapter sequence, which is an Xterra transposase sequence. And it'll tell you out of all the reads, they found these many reads with adapters. They looked at the total reads. They processed all the reads. 31% had this particular adapter. And then it tells you how many base pairs and what the total number of trimmed base pairs were. And then it goes into all this stuff which I could care less about, but some people in the room, and I'm not going to name who they are, even though they're all sitting in the back row, generally they find this is the kind of stuff that lights their fire, but it doesn't do anything for me. So we include it for that type. Now, align. This is the part I like the best, or I used to like it the best until just recently they changed the report, and now it makes me sad, but we'll go to it. I have the README, I have the accession number, and this is aligned to human. And I have another job that's for your homework that you should be doing in the READMEs. It'll give you homework so you can look at these things too. But here's the test job that I submitted. So we click on that. And this gives you so much stuff. It gives you BAM files. It gives you read files. It gives you a report file. And notice this, it gives you aligned reads and unmapped reads. So when it says aligned, that means it aligned with the human genome. Do we want to do anything with the reads that align with the human genome in the rest of the workshop? We don't want those. What we want are these indelicately named files that say unmapped. So it's got the forward strand and the reverse strand. Now, if you had a reference genome, which you could do, if you have a metagenomic sample, and this other example that you see here is the closest relative to this sample. So if I'm mapping it to this genome and then I want to take it and assemble that, you can do that. But for this particular one, which we know there's human contamination, we want to use the unmapped reads later on. You know what? Before we look at the report, I want to go show you this here, which is a direct link to, well, actually, I don't want to show you this on this one. This is the link to the genome browser of the human genome, which is way too big. First, we're going to look at this report, and then I'll show you the one for the bacterial genome, because the human genome is so big. When we open it in our genome browser, it's just too slow, and we don't care about it because there were so few reads. I want to show you a good example. So let's look at this SAMstat file. And you may ask, what do we use for the alignment? It uses Bowtie 2 for the alignment. And in the tutorial, it'll show you which reference to use. Because when you're writing your paper, you can say, I use the FASTQ Utilities program in BV-BRC, and then you cite the new Olson et al. Paper that I'll point to, which is our new paper on this. And I aligned it to whatever genome using Bowtie 2, and then you reference Bowtie 2. And so as long as you're providing the documentation, any reviewer is going to be happy, which is what I want. What we want is for you guys to publish like crazy and cite us like crazy and sail through the review process so that you can tell everybody else about it. Because the more people we get using the site, the more NIAID will continue to fund it. So let's look at this report. Used to, it had the cutest little Pac-Man kind of thing in the world that would pop up. And then I don't know who changed it. Somebody in this room, some of those back row types who are against cute, changed it to this very boring table that shows you the percentage of the reads that mapped at 30 and at 10 and were unmapped, and the total. And it used to be glorious, and now it's kind of boring. That's all I can say about it, but there it is. I can show you what it used to look like in the glorious days before they messed with it. So this is the one that's mapped to the Haemophilus influenzae genome. Oh, look at that. Isn't that just the most adorable thing you've ever seen? But they decided that everybody would rather see the boring table than the interactive feature. I just loved that thing. So I want to go back to this job to show you at this point where you can see how many of these reads are mapping to the genome browser for your reference genome. If it's the human genome, never click on this. But if it's this one, and this is loading it for this particular genome, and here are those read files. Now I'm going to click on this. Well, first let's wait for it to load. And this is one of the few places, I can't remember if Malik told you, where you can see a contrast between, this is a genome that we brought in from RefSeq. We go to GenBank and RefSeq every couple of days and bring in new stuff that we don't have. So if you've published a genome in GenBank and it's been a couple weeks and you don't see it here, let us know so that we can run it and bring it in, because we want to be as up to date as possible. Oh, I don't have the GenBank. Well, whatever. Yeah, I do want this on, but I don't really want to load RefSeq. And if I put in to see the reads, this is going to be too much data. It'll say it's too much. These BAM files are really big. And so I would need to zoom in, and it's still too much. You have to get pretty granular, especially if it's a big read file. And there it starts loading. So you're at this particular level. See how big that file is, and see those read files on it. And another thing you can do is click on an individual read file and it'll give you the information on that. I can't imagine anyone clicking on all of these things to see what these things are, but perhaps there are some masochists out there that wouldn't mind doing that. And then you can also see, remember, this is a genome that this was mapped to that, well, we didn't talk about it. We'll talk about it later in the workshop, but you can see where there are gaps, because in this particular exercise that you're supposed to do in your homework, it's mapped to the closest Haemophilus influenzae genome that we have to this particular organism. But that doesn't mean that it's got all the stuff that this organism has, or that this particular genome, this particular strain has all the stuff that this has. So you can see areas where it's missing things that the other ones have. You can play with this stuff if you want to and say, I want to see, hide the reads lined on the forward strand if one wanted to do that. Or you would have to click it back on and then click reverse strand. If you want, I don't know. I guess it would tell you more things about where you were seeing the discrepancies. But these are the things that one can do with the mapping tool. And I went from never using this to using this almost exclusively, to getting rid of contamination before I start the next steps.